Yes, namaste. Welcome everyone for today's webinar, an analysis of Operation Sindoor through the lens of Chanakya's Arthashastras. And thank you everyone for joining. We got Shri Abhijit G. Deshpande from New Jersey, Shri Kalyan Viswanathan joining from Dallas. And in this webinar, we're going to talk about we're going to talk about the ancient Indian strategist, philosopher Chanakya, also known as Kautilya, laid out timeless principles of statecraft, diplomacy, intelligence, and warfare in his seminal treatise, the Arthashastra. And so we're going to look at how these principles hold up in the modern world of military operations, national security, and strategic decision making. So I know a lot of people have already commented this is an interesting topic from an interesting perspective. And so we're going to have, again, President Kalyan Viswanathan, Shri Abhijit Deshpande, examining Operation Sindoor, which was a significant contemporary military and intelligence operation through the analytical framework provided by Chanakya's Arthashastra. And so as attendees, we'll take your questions and please share in the chat where you're zooming in from, give you a shout out, but you're going to get a understanding and an insight on how and into how ancient doctrines of power, alliance building, calculated risk, and open warfare can be applied to understand the success of Operation Sindoor. So thank you all for joining today's webinar. And again, please put in the chat where you're zooming in from. I can give you a shout out, fill out the little poll. And now let me introduce our two guests who are going to be leading us on this. And Dilipji from Maryland, thank you for joining. Let me start with President Sri Kalyan Viswanathan. He's an amazing leader of the university. He's really taken the university on his shoulders. He's the guy who's waking up thinking about this initiative and how to drive it forward in so many different ways. He has a master's degree in computer and information science from Ohio State, bachelor's in electrical electronics from Birla Institute of Technology. But it's because of his he also led Tata, a consultancy virtual a division for many years, very successful in his own professional career. But it's because of his association with Pujya Swami Dayananda Saraswati, the founder of the Arsha Vidya Gurukulam group of institutions. He had a 21-year association with Swamiji, and he carries that tradition forward and very open and glad to be a part of this Hindu University of America that we're building. And it has brought in people like Sri Abhijit Deshpande. He himself is a graduate student of Hindu University of America. He's been on this journey. He's got his own professional life where he was trained as an engineer from Maharashtra in India. He has his two kids in New Jersey. I think you still attend Shaka on a regular basis. But it's because of his areas of study around modernity, decolonization, and the reception of Hindu scriptures within and outside of Hindu traditions that he's been focusing and that brings him here today. And so with that introduction, let me hand it to, I think Angie will get us started. Let me just shout out to the people who put in the chat. Patrice, glad that you are joining us from Maryland. Kaivalyaji from Woodbridge, New Jersey. Hariayarji from Santa Barbara, California. Thank you for joining. Always my pleasure to be hosting. Kalyanji, I hope that was a good context, and let me hand it to you.
Terrific. So, namaste to everybody. Very, very warm welcome to this webinar. Actually, Abhijit and I presented this material in the conference called the Dharma in the Digital Age conference that took place, a couple of months ago in Atlanta. So we've kind of pared that down a little bit, and we're going to talk through a set of slides. So we're going to share the presentation. I'll do some introductory material. Abhijit will get into the Arthashastra a little bit more. Then I'll come back and share a little bit, some concluding slides. So let me see. I'll share my... Yeah. An analysis of Operation Sindoor in the light of Kautilya's Arthashastra. That's our topic. See, Operation Sindoor did not happen in a vacuum. A lot of different ingredients contributed to this Operation Sindoor. First of all, unprecedented economic growth in the last decade or so. India's GDP doubled in 10 years, and its tax receipts tripled in the same 10 years. And that allowed for a lot of other investments, such as investments in weapons development. I mean, all of you by now very well know that this was a fantastic display of military capabilities that was the world witnessed in Operation Sindoor. Integration of electronics and digital systems, satellite communications, guided missile technology, air defense systems, the ability to protect our assets on the Indian side, while at the same time targeting with precision, with the devastating strike capability in enemy land, exceptional digital coordination across military, air, and naval forces, coupled with sustained diplomatic engagement around the world, and the ability at the heart of it to take political and military risks. See, all of this was involved in Operation Sindoor, which then resulted in a new paradigm in India's response to terrorism. India has moved the needle in terms of how it will respond to terrorism comprehensively using Operation Sindoor. It did not happen in a vacuum. If you look at India's response to terrorism, it has been a story of restraint more than anything else, of caution. Right from the days when, in 1948, when Pakistan occupied a big part of Kashmir, Operation Gibraltar, 1965, Operation Genghis Khan, 1971, the Kashmiri Pandit Exodus, 1990, the Bombay blasts of 1993, Coimbatore blasts of 1998, where Lal Krishna Advani was specifically targeted, the hijacking of the IC-914 flight, which was taken to Afghanistan, and a critical terrorist was released as part of the negotiations. Kargil War of 99, the attack on the Indian Parliament, 2001, 2002 Akshardham attack in Ahmedabad, Mumbai trains attack in 2006, 26/11 attacks in Mumbai, 2008, Uri attacks 2016, Pulwama 2019, and now lastly, Pahalgam 2025. Now, this is not an exhaustive list. There are many more to be talked about. But what it shows, and the story that this tells, is that India's response has always been restrained. They internationalize it, they complain about it to the United Nations, but retaliation has always been relatively restrained until the recent times. And when I say recent times, I mean the 2016, 2019, and 2025, the Uri, Pulwama, and Pahalgam, these attacks stand out in terms of a degree of a continual escalation of the retaliation. 26/11, one of the most ghastly attacks on Indian soil in Mumbai under the previous UPA government, went entirely without any response. India had no response. It did nothing at all other than punish the one terrorist they caught. The nature of the enemy is also very, very significant. it's not a singular enemy. There is the civilian leadership, there is a military ISI complex, and then there is a terror networks. And they all function both simultaneously in close alliance with each other, but also with sufficient degree of separation. So it allows for, it enables an extreme degree of deception and deniability. So, for example, the civilian leadership will continue to engage internationally with propaganda, and it presents a very suave and sophisticated face to the international world. They'll demand talks with India. They will try to equalize and hyphenate the relationship between Pakistan and India. Present India as equally the aggressor, and sometimes even more the aggressor than themselves, and so on, and completely obfuscate the landscape of diplomacy and international relations, obfuscate, confuse, etc. The army leadership, on the other hand, it's it has nurtured these nuclear threats, the strategic deterrence, the threat of a massive nuclear escalation always overhanging, and the potential for overt attacks into Indian soil. That is the role of the military ISI complex. But they also end up nurturing the terror networks which participate in covert attacks with, in most cases, civilian targets, and inflict wounds on India through 1,000 cuts. And at the heart of it is deception and deniability. It's been a very confusing enemy for India to take on. India's response after every terrorist attack follows the following pattern. Take the matter to the United Nations or to the international community. Like sort of like petitioning, please do something. These people are hurting us. Prepare a lot of dossiers with accumulating evidence, as though the evidence is going to create some kind of material difference in how either Pakistan interacts with India, or how the world will interact with India. But India is very busily preparing dossiers, demonstrating and proving that the terrorist attacks originated from across the border. And of course, this is almost always in response to the loud protest from coming across the border, which goes something like this. Where is the evidence that Pakistan was involved? We had nothing to do with it. It was all homemade terrorism. And then, of course, there is, we get into signing treaties, expecting a change of heart with Pakistan. And of course, we retaliate briefly, mostly a very well-defined, small-scale retaliation. And then go back into our bunkers and wait for the next attack. And this kind of response, restrained response, this pattern has been there throughout. And it rests on certain constraints. Okay, the first constraint is one of nuclear escalation. That, the possibility of a nuclear exchange, of a nuclear weapon going up in flames, setting a fire to one of India's cities, causing the enormous damage, has been a source of fear for India in the past. There is also the fear of the retaliation from the Indian Muslim community. If we attack Pakistan, what will the Muslims within India do? They'll be upset. So a pervasive need, a preeminent need to appease the Muslims of India also seems to always factor in to the need for a restrained response. So these are sort of like two kinds of threats. You can call it an extension of the terrorist threat. A nuclear attack on India from Pakistan, and a massive escalation of violence from within the Muslim community in India. Now you couple this with the third restraint, which is a commitment to ahimsa, a deep commitment to ahimsa, which keeps on showing up every now and then within the Indian strategic thinking. Taken together, the fear of nuclear escalation, the fear of retaliation from within India, from the Muslim community, and a broad commitment to ahimsa tempers down and blunts any kind of aggressive response from India. Operation Sindoor was a decisive war campaign. It decimated Pakistan's military capability. So now we'll get into the Arthashastra. Okay, I'll hand off to Abhijit in a moment, but I want to revisit two shlokas from the Arthashastra. Here he says, power is threefold. The power of knowledge is the power of counsel, mantra. Mantra Shakti. Okay, mantri, pradhana mantri, mantri gana. Okay, comes from mantra, the power of counsel. The power of treasury and the army is the power of might, prabhava Shakti. And the power of valor is the power of energy, utsaha Shakti. Arthashastra 6:233. Thus the king, superior in each of the latter powers of energy, utsaha, might, prabhava, and counsel, mantra, easily overcomes the enemy. It's a superb combination of two shlokas from the Arthashastra. What it means is utsaha. How to interpret utsaha? Energy, bravery, courage, strength, enthusiasm, spirit, training, valor. All of that goes into the term utsaha. Prabhava, might, wealth, purchasing power, weapons, stockpiles, strength of the army, artillery, missiles, army, navy, air force, all of that constitutes prabhava. And then mantra is counsel, wisdom, intelligence, the science of war, secrecy, foresight, strategic thinking, diplomacy, alliances. All of those go into the category of mantra. So these should be read as utsaha Shakti, prabhava Shakti, mantra Shakti. And all three were eminently on display in Operation Sindoor. Now, a few slides on Rajadharma. The source texts of Rajadharma in Hinduism are the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and the Arthashastra. The three preeminent texts. There are others. There's Niti Shastra, and there is, even the Panchatantra and the other texts like that are have a lot of Rajadharma in them. But these are the main texts of Rajadharma. They contain the dialogues that enunciate the principles of Rajadharma. And when I use the word principles, it means timeless principles. Timeless in the sense they are applicable at all times. They are as applicable during the Ramayana, as they were applicable during Mahabharata, as they were applicable during Chandragupta Maurya's time, as they are applicable today. And those principles are, by their very nature, timeless. And that another word for timeless is Sanatana. Sanatana means that which exists outside of time, beyond time, eternal. The Ramayana belongs to the Treta Yuga, the Mahabharata to the juncture between the Dwapara and the Kali, the ending, the final stages of the Dwapara Yuga. And the Arthashastra is a Kali Yuga text. Every bit of it is a Kali Yuga text. Now, we must also understand that India, Bharat, has always been constrained by what I call the Arjuna syndrome. Arjuna syndrome. And what is that? Well, it is the syndrome of wanting to avoid battle, avoid violence, avoid military engagement at all costs. And when I say Arjuna syndrome, Arjuna argued with Krishna, saying that, hey, is it not better, Krishna, that I walk away from this battle altogether and let the Kauravas rule the entire kingdom? We Pandavas will take sannyas, we will walk away unilaterally. Okay, and you can frame it like this, and in Indian history bears the imprint of this abiding predicament, whether to stand and fight the earthly wars or to retreat into a spiritual quest. I'm using the word retreat in the sense retreat inward, go inward into a spiritual quest, or move forward outward to fight the earthly wars. Of course, our Purusharthas will not frame it this way. They will say the movement from the commitment to fight the earthly wars, the Kshatriya Dharma, to the retreat into a spiritual quest, the Brahmana Dharma, is not really a retreat. It's actually an advance. It's an evolution. But be that as it may, historically, India has struggled with this. That's why, there's a large part of India that argues, in order to make peace with Pakistan, we should simply hand over Kashmir to them, and then all our problems will be solved. Which, in fact, it's quite foolish to make that argument. But there is this tendency to say this. And it plays out, right from the Mahabharata to Gautama Buddha, who was a prince, a Kshatriya prince, who relinquished his kingdom to become a bhikshu, a sannyasin, and then gave rise to Buddhism. Vardhamana Mahavira took ahimsa to extremes, and the pendulum swings again with Chanakya, the unification of the Chakravarti Kshetra of Bharat, and others such as Emperor Ashoka, who in the aftermath of Chanakya, 2 generations later, he fights the major war in Kalinga and then retreats into Buddhism in Ahimsa immediately. Prithviraj Chauhan, who keeps forgiving Muhammad Ghori. Chhatrapati Shivaji, rearguard action against these Islamists, the Muslim emperors. And of course, Mahatma Gandhi, who swung the pendulum again in favor of ahimsa. So in Hindu thought, there is this pendulum that always swings between the 2 poles of dharma and ahimsa. Ahimsa, paramo dharma. Amongst all dharmas, ahimsa is paramount. But then there is also then the question of how do you defend your territory against the adharma violence, right? Now we will get into the Arthashastra. So I would like to hand it off to Abhijit Deshpande ji to take us through the following slides. Abhijit ji, over to you.
Dhanyavad, Kalyanji. So, like Kalyanji said, the principles of Arthashastra, Chanakya-niti are timeless, Sanatana. But still, this is a point-in-time snapshot as to when did Arthashastra really came alive. So, this was during the period of Mauryas, Chandragupta Maurya's period, Chanakya. That's where these core principles came into picture. This is almost, you can say, like 2,500 years before these principles came into picture. But even if this is like 25,000 years and all that we say, but all the Indian kings and the Indian psyche, all of us do have a sense of Chanakya-niti ingrained. Even if many of the people may not have actually read anything from Chanakya-niti, we know the word. That itself shows that as an Indian ethos, as a Hindu ethos, we have maintained this continuity for many, many centuries. And that's the manifestation of that. So if you can move to the next slide. The central piece that is relevant from Operation Sindhu's perspective is how the Rajadharma comes into picture. And what does Arthashastra say about it? And so from Rajadharma perspective, these are the 3 primary duties, and the word here is duties for the king for Rajadharma, which is Rakshana, protection and expansion of kingdom, Palana, which is administration of the state to expand the treasury. And this is very important, and you'll see the treasury part coming in again and again. and Yogakshema, which is ensuring overall welfare of people. And Yogakshema has two aspects. One is the Shreyas and Prayasa, which is what Bhagavad Gita talks about. So our Dharma Granthas, right from Veda Upanishads to Purana Itihas, they have entrusted this duty on the king, that the king must be responsible for Rakshana, Palana, and Yogakshema of the subjects and the various topics that come around it. All the subjects that are there in Arthashastra are around the Rajadharma and how a state should be a well-run, prosperous, which is bustling with activities. And from that center point is how we are going to unlock how does Operation Sindhu look like through the lens of Arthashastra. So if you can go to the next slide. The key part, how do you define? So this is the most important aspect as to when we say state, what does it really mean? And Arthashastra calls it as Saptanga. Sapta is 7, Anga is parts. So there are 7 Prakrutis that are defined for the state power. And primarily it says that Kautilya develops this holistic substantive idea of state power for state capacity for which there is no precedent. There have been a lot of modern texts that have come from Europe or from the other ancient civilization like China, which talk of Machiavelli's text and Chinese text. But there is no precedent in terms of defining state in such a normative way, which is a Saptanga theory. And this is truly an outstanding theoretical accomplishment. Let's see what this means. So any state has these 7 parts to it, or 7 prakrutis to it. So the first and foremost is Swami, which is the ruler or king, and Deshasthana, time and space. The meaning of Swami changes. In today's world, it's all democratic structure, but we still relate what the Swami means. The second is Amatya, which are the ministers, the council of ministers, which run the government, administration, policy, all of that. Janapada, the people, Jana is people, Janapada. Then Durga, fort and fortresses. Obviously, in today's times, that is going to be the capital, the border areas, the integrity of the state, all of that. Kosha, which is the treasury, the economy of the state. Danda, which is army and military. And Mitra, the allies and friends through the foreign policy, the alliances that the state is building. So these are the 7 defining characteristics of the of any state. And this is what Chanakya is saying, which is another way of looking at how the state as in a normative fashion can be defined. Moving to the next one. Each one of these now plays a role in action. So that's what we are going to see. From the primary of this is the Swami. In Indian context, obviously Prime Minister becomes the ruler, even if the word ruler in democratic context has no meaning. But from the construct perspective, we understand what the Prime Minister's role is. But let's quickly look at the other aspects like Amatya. These are all the ministers, and now start relating each one of these in the Indian context. How do you reflect upon the Council of Ministers that are currently there in the Modi government? The Janapada, the development works and welfare programs working relatively corruption-free environment to serve the people, because that gives the strength to the Swami, that gives the strength to the Amatyas. Durga, which is all about fortification of capital cities, state capitals, key cities, towns. We have seen significant reduction of terrorist activities happening in India after 2014. That's the testimony of that. The Kosha, which is expanding economy. I don't think I need to add much about it. We are all witnessing it. We are all experiencing it. The resurgence of the economy and the march forward. Then comes the Danda, which is a maintenance of law and order, the entire defense establishment. And then lastly comes the Mitra. This is where another substantial change that we all have witnessed and seen, and we continue to see in terms of the network of alliances and international relationships and consistent diplomatic engagement across the world. Now,
So if I may add one thing. See, if we look at the condition of the state, the Indian state, through the lens of this Saptanga model that Chanakya has articulated in the Arthashastra, what we can readily understand, readily see, is that at every one of these prakritis, India has developed itself, has advanced itself, has fortified itself, has become much more stronger, has strengthened itself, right? It's, you could almost easily wonder if, is that an accident? Or is the thinking behind statecraft aligned with the principles of the Arthashastra? Okay, so this is an important part of how to understand. Operation Sindoor is a consequence of the developing, expanding strength of the Indian state across all of these dimensions. And by the same token, you can also evaluate Pakistan as a state through the same Saptanga model. In fact, the Saptanga model offers us an objective framework to assess the relative strengths and weaknesses of any modern state. Even United States of America can be subjected to an analysis of this Saptanga theory, and it will yield very good insights about the nature of the state. Back to you, Abhijit.
So when you look at, based on this, a state is there. Now the next part comes in. How do you assess what is the condition of the state here? And Chanakya says that there are three states that you can classify a particular state to be in. It is in a Vruddhi state, which is the advancement, or it could be in a Sthanam state, which is a stability state, or it could be declining, which is Kshaya, which is declining part. Now, all states, kingdoms, countries are always in one of these states. Now, we all will relate the three. Today's modern paradigm is developed countries, developing countries, and underdeveloped countries, which only show one direction to it, which is in terms of GDP and the economic measure. But these three, Vruddhi, Sthana, and Kshaya, also deal with the other aspects from the traditional Hindu view perspective. And that's if you have to rethink in terms of the paradigm, we need to start understanding these terms like Vruddhi, Sthanam, and Kshaya, and use that to analyze the condition of a particular state or a kingdom.
Yeah, and I'll add one more thing. We can readily understand that India, Bharat, is in the Vriddhi state right now. It is advancing, rapidly advancing, right? And we could even argue that the United States of America, even though it is a developed country, the greatest and the most powerful country in the world, it's actually in the state of Kshaya. It is declining in many ways. Okay, so this is sort of the rate of progress or decline of the states. Yeah. Now, if you look at Bharat, India has been a shrinking and declining state for over 1,000 years. If you think of ancient Bharat, it had its footprint across many countries. And today we are continually losing territory to Pakistan, losing territory to China and other parts. And of course, in the imagination, we still carry the vision of an Akhanda Bharat, even though it is extremely fraught with risks and dangers. This is the condition of India's state. It's advancing now almost for the first time after 1,000 years of decline. Yeah. Now we go to an analysis of the neighboring states. Over to you, Abhijit.
Yeah. So when you look at the analysis that is to be done on how the neighboring powers look like, Chanakya classifies them into three: the Dharma Vijaya, Lobha Vijaya, and Asura Vijaya. So primarily it says that why would the neighbors have hostility with you? These are the three types of mindset. Dharma Vijay is going to be seeking for submission, lordship, surrender, no property or land. So Lobha Vijay is going after land, gold, wealth, property, goods, and not life. Asura Vijay, on the other hand, is going to go after land, gold, wealth, property, goods, wives, women, sons, and life. So Lobha and Asura, I think it is pretty clear distinction from the today's world order perspective. You can start classifying the wars that are happening, the goals behind those. Where are they going? Which are the ones that are going after Asura, the hegemonic wars that are being fought for the complete conversion and change? They are falling into Asura. Lobha are the ones that are for seeking, expanding the territories. And Dharma Vijaya, this is where the most nuance is required to be put in.
Yeah, and if we ask ourselves the question, what kind of neighbor is Pakistan? In which category do we place it? Okay, I think it becomes very, very clear, isn't it? Arthashastra provides a very clear conceptual framework for putting a neighbor into a particular category. And I think that's a clarity that often Indian state often lacks. Sometimes it confuses. What kind of a state is Pakistan? We keep kind of confusing ourselves. Yeah,
It is
Abhijit.
clearly the Asura
Yeah.
Vijaya state, seeking Asura Vijaya. And we all know we can relate why it is that way.
Correct.
Now, obviously, this has to be the first comprehended, and a state who is understanding this Chanakya Niti is going to do that. I'm pretty sure that analysis must have been in place. But this is how Chanakya is saying it. Now, moving
So
to the
this
next
is-
one.
Just one second, Abhijit. This meant comprehending, perceiving, understanding the nature, the mindset, the mentality of the neighbor, every neighbor by neighbor, right, is part of Mantra Shakti. Mantra Shakti, which is the first determining factor in how to respond, how to act towards a neighboring state. So here are some verses, okay, from the Arthashastra, just to kind of, reinforcing the previous slide. Chapter 12. There are three kings who attack. Yeah, go ahead, Abhijit.
Yeah, so this is an interesting time, right? When Arthashastra was written, this specific aspect of religious war, which demands conversion, explicitly was not seen by that time's Bharatvarsha at all. Okay, so this is one, I would say, kind of a critical comment on where does Arthashastra stand compared to the jihad and other aspects that we see today in the world. Closest that you can go is the Asura Vijay. Okay, the Dharma Vijay, Lobha Vijay, and all of that, out of that, Asura Vijay. But this is the kind of a commentary on that. If you look at 12.1.15, the bottom right, that talks about the demoniacal conqueror, Asura Vijay, is satisfied only with the seizure of land, gold, sons, wives, and life. This can classify it, but in really, that's the closest that we can go for any religious war. Now moving to the next one. And in case of Sindoor, many of you would remember in few months before, Munir really talked about the jihad officially. And that started it. So you know why we classify Pakistan into Asura Vijayi and not just the Lobha Vijayi, which many people want to put in. Like, for example, US President said it's a trade, which is important. So if it is a trade, you're really going inside a Lobha Vijay category. It's not, it's Asura Vijay. So that this gives you kind of a clarity. It's amazing how after 2500 years also, these verses are highly relevant to this highly localized situation. Moving to the next slide. Now here comes how the king is going to look at the Raj Mandala. Raj Mandala is one of the very important aspect of Arthashastra. So Vijigishu, the conqueror, which is in this context is India, is at the center. How India is looking at Rajmandala, which is configuration of the kings. And while we are analyzing first it from the context of India, you can very well apply this to every country and see how their Rajmandala looks like. And that forms the international policy, the geopolitics, as we talk about, how each country behaves with another country, bunch of other countries, how that happens. So it first starts with Vijigishu, the conqueror. Then comes the Ari and Shatru, the enemy, the antagonist. These are naturally going to be there. Why they would be there? There will be certain verses that we'll be talking about. But every conqueror or Vijigishu or the state will have these. The first Shatru, antagonist, the Shatru, if you look at, there will be a state which will be in opposition to that, which is Mitra of conqueror's ally. And then Pashnigrahi. Then comes Mitra, conqueror's ally's ally. And this cycle continues. So the one that you're fighting with, so India is now fighting with Pakistan. So in that context, the Vijigishu and the Shatru. Behind comes the antagonist. So China will fit into that. Sometimes China can play the role of Ari Mitra, or sometimes it could be an antagonist. So there is always a paradigm to say that, okay, any country should be ready to fight two wars. Now, what are these two wars? These are the two wars. One coming from the front, and while you're busy fighting with the enemy coming from the front, your backside is exposed, and from there, second enemy will fighting. And this framework takes care of both. And this really creates kind of a multidimensional chess, if you will, in terms of saying how these countries' interests are aligned to each other, because that gives rise to who is a Shatru, who is a Ari, who is a Ari Mitra, who is Ari Mitra's Mitra, and Akranda or Udaisna. All of these something that will keep coming in. So this framework is not just about a particular state, but we have to analyze it for every state on the map and see how Rajmandala plays up. So it's not a two-dimensional view, it's really a multi-dimensional view that gives rise to geopolitics from Kautilya's perspective.
And the key idea is the balance of powers in a region, and that balance of power is always very dynamic. And one of the remarkable characteristics of the Arthashastra is that it understands the dynamic nature of balance of powers. And when states are themselves in a state of growth and expansion and advancement and decline and stability and stagnation and so on, and every state is going through its own internal journey, but they are also part of a Rajamandala, a configuration of states in which alliances play a critical role in determining outcomes of conflicts.
Now, while we've introduced these terms, how they play out, at a very high level, what are their strategies? So Vijigishu, which is the primary state, the conqueror, is the hub of the circle. Ari or Shatru are the enemies that the Vijigishu needs to be guarded against, which is we keep referring to China and Pakistan. Mitra and Akranda, these are the allies, friend or ally in the rear to be trusted. So for example, who is the ally that we can trust when it comes to Pakistan? And who is the ally when it comes to fighting against China? That will decide Mitra and Akranda. Ari Mitra, enemy's ally to be watched and guarded against. For example, we have seen Turkey playing a particular role, and that can be classified under as Ari Mitra. Similarly, Pashnigraha, enemy in the rear. So if you take India-Pakistan as a fight, China becomes the enemy at the rear. And who is the Pashnigrahi that we need to guard against? Then comes Antardhi. There will be some weak intervening king, ruler, or state that would be there. Madhyama is the neutral and has his own plan. And Udasina is a completely neutral king or who has their own plans. So you can start putting these based on their own dynamics and the dynamics from the view of Vijigishu, how the Rajamandala really evolves. And so we analyze this Rajamandala on a world map to see who is where. And naturally, this is a view created from India's perspective, Bharat's perspective. If I take a view from Pakistan's perspective, there will be a different Rajamandala. And then this multidimensional chess will be continued to be played. So Bharat is a Vijigishu, Pakistan is a Shatru, China is a Shatru, Bangladesh is a Pashnigraha. And Kalan, you can expand on this like each of these terminologies, how are they? For example, Nepal is Antardhi, is a small state, important state, but how much impact it can create between India and China war. It's a weak state from that perspective. It can create a problem, even if it is a weak. If we don't, India doesn't take care of interest with Nepal, it can be a big problem because the other king or the state will start leveraging that. Bhutan is Antardhi. So Russia is classified as a Mitra. I think we all will all agree on this. Japan is a Mitra. Now, when every time Prime Minister Modi goes out and says that I have this connection with this particular country, and you see what he's saying in specific, and you will start relating to many of these things that are there in Chanakya Niti. Like what messaging is he giving to that particular state or country? Afghanistan, Antardhi. Mongolia is a Udasina, such a big, vast landmass, maybe acting like a buffer, but it's a Udasin state. North Korea, Ari Mitra, closer to China. Korea is Mitra Mitra. So how to leverage Mitra Mitra? Obviously, in the interest of time, we can't get into every detail of this, but there are details in terms of how to leverage each of the country and how to try and convert that into another state. Saudi Arabia, Ari Mitra, Oman, Ari Mitra, Yemen, Ari Mitra. And in the end comes the most important one. This is a question for everybody. US, where we all are, our Karma Bhumi here, and our many of our kids' Janma Bhumi, and potentially their Karma Bhumi. Where do we keep USA, Mitra or Ari? We won't answer it. This is for each one of us to analyze and take a deeper interest into Chanakya Niti, develop that worldview, how this is evolving.
So I'd like to make one point here, which is, the function of diplomacy, international diplomacy, and international relations, foreign relations, etc., is to continually engage with countries to sort of try to turn them into mitras, into friends, where they were previously aris or shatrus, right? So a very good, contemporary example is Prime Minister Modi's very recent visit to the Maldives. Okay, until not long ago, Maldives was very hostile towards India, but it's being turned, it's being transformed, and that is the remarkable function of diplomacy in this international relations framework. I'll also point to one more thing. In past conflicts between India and Pakistan, the Islamic countries, the Organization of Islamic Countries, they would always come together in a united voice, unitary condemnation of India. Okay, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Egypt, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, Oman, all of them will join together and condemn India. But not this time with Operation Sindoor. Pakistan got isolated within the Islamic world very skillfully through international diplomacy. So years and years of cultivation of relationships with United Arab Emirates and with Saudi Arabia and Egypt and so on, which often we may have wondered, why is India working so hard to make friends in the Islamic world? Well, here is the reason. In the Raja Mandala, if you can isolate your enemy, it is a source of enormous power in the realm of international relations. So again, India's engagement with Afghanistan is another very interesting case study in how Chanakya's Raja Mandala is operating.
So I mean, just before this, see, Operation Sindoor, we all know is continuing. Okay, for many of us, it's a tactical continuation that this will happen. But now, if you really look at it from Chanakya Niti perspective, there is no way you can change Pakistan from being Shatru to Mitra. Why? Because it falls into that Asura Vijayi category. And that interest is going to be much bigger than what Pakistan and India as people can do. The motivations are much higher, of very high order. So there is no way this equation is ever going to change, right? The real meaning that Operation Sindoor 2.0 will come, 3.0 will come, and it's continuing. It really means for a foreseeable future, this dimension is not changing. And that's why it is really important. Should India, and this is not a answer to any question, but this is a thought for everyone to think about. Should India get into a unending continuous war, or should India take this kind of a opportunity to do very short targeted attacks, get back to its base, continue growing, but knowing that this Shatru is not going on? And that's
Yeah.
what really currently where we are from
Yeah,
Rajahmundry perspective.
and in fact, one of the great successes of Operation Sindoor is how short and quick it was. It declined Pakistan's capabilities, decimated its air force. It neutralized its nuclear threat, uh, its air defense systems, and ended the war quickly in a matter of 3-4 days, which is extraordinary in the sense that if you compare it to the unending, never-ending conflict between Ukraine and Russia, and in the Gaza Strip between Israel and Palestine, and so on, India's war with Pakistan was very, very smart, very, very quick, and it minimized casualties, it minimized losses, financial and economic loss. It was quick and it delivered a very strong message, not only to Pakistan, but internationally. And that is the success of Chanakya's analysis, in my view. And I would say the Ukraine and Russia conflict is so much in contrast to this. It has no end in sight. It's just going on and on for years, depleting both countries. And that's exactly what Chanakya would advise against. Yeah, Abhijit.
This now comes the real crux, and this is very nuanced so far what we have seen, and it will be a very interesting how we apply this, right? What are the type of wars that Kautilya is recommending or saying? That he says that there are 4 types of wars, and you need to use this, adapt it, that particular strategy with the tactical use of deception. The first one is mantra yuddha, diplomacy, engagement, peace treaties, alliances, all of that, which is what is visible, long drawn, all of this, right? Second is Prakash Yuddha. This is an open war. Prakash Yuddha means it's declared that, oh, we are doing an attack and all that. Declared with place, time, goals, all of this. Kuta Yuddha, concealed war. The whole guerrilla war, terrorist attack, many people relate this to unknown people acting in Pakistan, China, what have you, right? All of that goes under Kuta Yuddha. Then comes the last one, Gudha Yuddha. The Gudha Yuddha is clandestine war, assassinations, murders, poisoning. Now, Operation Sindoor clearly was based on the Mantra Yuddha, which was the diplomatic and economic growth that India was having. Then had the Prakash Yuddha, which was actually Operation, the tactical part of it. Kuta Yuddha is continuously going on. Gudha Yuddha, and the jury is out, and everybody can have their own opinion as to what is it in today's India that we all are, based on our Prakriti, are we really fighting the Kuta Yuddha? Is it in India's Prakriti today to fight Kuta Yuddha? We are not going to answer it. This is for, or even Gudha Yuddha. Mostly Mantra and Prakasha is what will be talked about, will be glorified. Kuta and Gudha probably will never hear. Probably it will become part of legends, part of films, part of the novels, and hearsay. But these 4 types of wars, we know Pakistan is doing. We know officially Mantra and Prakasha is happening. Maybe Gudha and Kuta is happening. From India perspective, we will never know. And that's how we start analyzing or applying Kautilya Niti or Chanakya Niti across all the wars that are happening.
So, one comment about this. See, when India clandestinely supports Baluchistan, the Baluchistan Liberation Army, and gives them moral support and even weapons support, etc., it is engaging in a kind of Kuta Yuddha, right? It's applying pressure on Pakistan from its western flank. When India supports Afghanistan, the current government in Afghanistan, the Taliban, and encourages them or supports them financially, morally, etc., to continue their attacks into Pakistan from the north, that's also Kuta Yuddha. When unknown gunmen take down terrorists quietly in the dark of the night, and nobody knows who these people are, these are unknown gunmen, okay, and that is Gura Yuddha. And Kautilya says all four are important, equally important. And in war, once you have a declared hostility towards a neighbor, you cannot anymore talk about dharma, adharma, ahimsa, etc. Now it's a matter of strategy. How do you win? How do you win decisively? How do you win quickly? How do you decimate your opponents? And how do you minimize losses on your own side? That is the concern that Kautilya is articulating throughout his Arthashastra. Next.
Kalanji, there are a lot of questions. So, and in the interest of time, do you want to see questions or you want to?
Yeah, let's finish this.
Yes,
Let's quickly finish this. Go ahead.
Yeah.
We'll rapidly finish this. Go ahead.
So there are these 6 types of foreign policy that we talk about. So that Kautilya talks about. So how does the state work with active hostility, open war, vigraha, dvaidhi bhava, making peace with one while at war with another, yana asana, samshraya, seeking support, protection, augmentation, and sandhi, making peace, alliances, treaties. All of these are going to be tactical. They are going to be sometimes only time bound to gain the tactical benefit. And all of this combined gives the state or the ruler ability to decide how to work on that multidimensional chess, if you will, of Rajamandala. Because these are the 6 ways in which you are changing the dimensions or the way Rajamandala is operating for your country, as well as you're making sure that the other country is also changing, making necessary changes into their Rajamandala by influencing this. And that's, we have seen when India is now has continued to buy oil and everything from Iran and Russia, how it is impacting Europe. That is an example of how foreign policy is impacting their Rajamandala, if you apply that into their context. So this is how Rajamandala continues to change.
So these 6 are called Shadgunya, and they go together with the Saptanga. The Saptanga, the Shadgunya, they become foundational frameworks within the Arthashastra. Now, can I take the rest of them very quickly, Abhijit ji?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, here is a small collection of shlokas from the Arthashastra. Okay, very, very important. The army indeed is rooted in the treasury. In the absence of the treasury, the army goes over to the enemy or kills the king. It's an interesting statement. And it's applicable to Pakistan more than to India. In India, the economy is strong and the army is strong. But in Pakistan, the economy is weak. And the army goes over and kills the enemy, kills the king. And very frequently we observe that in Pakistan, the military conducts a coup and dislodges the head of the state, the prime minister. In conformity with the place, the time, and the work, however, one of the two, the treasury and the army, becomes important. That is, at any given time, the king must pay more attention to the army or to the treasury. And that's a matter of situational intelligence. A sensitivity to time and place, which guides the king on what to focus on. For the army is the means of acquiring and protecting the treasury, and the treasury is the means of acquiring and protecting the army. This is a symbiotic, mutually reinforcing relationship. The economy and the army. Army includes the navy and includes air force and all that. Because it brings into being all objects, the calamity of the treasury is more serious. If your treasury declines, depletes, and withers away, it's a far more serious problem than if the army falls apart. The economic calamity that has befallen Pakistan is far more serious. It's long term. Its ability to recover, therefore, is constrained by the condition of its economy. For in a fight with military operations, there is loss of prosperity for both sides because of losses and expenses. The king shall think of the circle of states as a wheel, himself at the hub, and his allies drawn to him by the spokes, though separated by intervening territory as its rim. So, this is the Rajamandala. The king must examine the Rajamandala fully before he decides to go to war. The circle of constituent elements is the basis for the 6 measures of foreign policy. We've already seen this: peace, war, staying quiet, mobilization, seeking shelter, dual policy, etc. Shadgunya. For it is easy to make peace with an ally, not with an enemy. Understanding the relative strengths of the surrounding states in the Rajamandala is the key to structuring a foreign policy, a regime of international relations that is advantageous to the king, the Vijigishu, the state. When the benefits accruing to kings under a treaty, irrespective of their status as the weaker state, the equal to the other kind of king or state, is fair to each one, peace by agreement shall be the preferred course. When the benefits accruing to the 2 states or the 2 kings is approximately equal and fair, peace by agreement shall be the preferred outcome, preferred course. If the benefits are to be distributed unfairly, war is preferable. The enemy, however strong he may be, becomes vulnerable to harassment and destruction when the enemy is squeezed between the conqueror and his allies. So that's the criticality of alliances. And nobody in the ancient world has articulated the theory of alliances and friendships and international relations through the theory of Rajamandala as the Arthashastra. There is no equal to it. He who is well versed in the science of politics should employ all the means, advancement, decline, and stable condition, as well as weakening and extermination of the enemies as part of their policy. He who seeks the 6 measures of policy as being interdependent in this manner plays as he pleases with the kings in the circle, the Rajamandala, tied by the chains of his intellect. So this conceptual understanding of the framework, the Rajamandala, the relative strengths of the individual states through this analysis, that is mantra shakti. That is what Arthashastra speaks about in terms of the intellect, the mantra, the power of mantra. Understanding the relative strengths of the states in the Rajamandala is the key. So finally, if we compare, right, after ascertaining the relative strength or weaknesses of powers, the place and time, seasons for marching, time required for raising armies, possibilities of revolts in the rear, losses, potential losses and expenses, gains and new troubles for himself and the enemy, the conqueror should march if superior in strength, otherwise stay quiet. So this is Arthashastra speaking. This is Mantra Shakti in action. This analysis of the international, what you call geostrategic chessboard of powers, of balance of powers, when identifying the position of advantage and strength through Mantra Shakti is the critical counsel of the Arthashastra to the kings. Now, if you look at India and Pakistan through the lens of the Saptangas, through ruler and king, the qualities of kingship, India is strong and decisive. Pakistan is relatively weak and compromised, a lot of infighting. Government and administration aligned and loyal. Pakistan is divided, misaligned. The military doing one thing, the diplomacy doing something else, the terrorists doing something else. That becomes a weakness at some point. The cities in the countryside, there is Janapada, the people. In India, with all the simmering dissatisfaction, is relatively satisfied compared to Pakistan, where the people are deeply dissatisfied. It's a very weak power, very weak state. The forts, fortresses, the capital, border areas. India has defended it beautifully under Operation Sindoor. None of the missiles, the drones, the attacks launched by Pakistan found the target in India. There's not a single photograph that has surfaced of damage within India of any major installation, defense capability, city, anything. So India has defended itself. Pakistan is fractured, is endangered. So much loss it has suffered in terms of its air bases, its nuclear facilities, its terrorist infrastructures. The treasury, the economy of the state, India is strong and resilient. Pakistan is in debt, dependent, constantly begging for more funds. The military, India is strong, armed, ready. Tremendous advancements in capabilities. Satellite capability, military capability, weapons capabilities. Pakistan relatively is weak and unprepared. India it's in terms of its diplomacy and alliances and building a network of relationships across the world has done a fantastic job in the last 10 years, especially in the last 5 years. Pakistan engages in mostly fakery, lies, things that are, stories and narratives that are easily shot down, easily dismantled. And it gives you, all in all, it gives you the relative strength of India and Pakistan looking through the lens of the Saptanga theory of Arthashastra. This is our final slide. In the end, this battle between dharma and adharma, dharma versus adharma, is a never-ending story. It is eternal. It has always been there from times immemorial. In the Itihasa Puranas tradition, it is represented in the personality or the archetypes of the Daiva and the Asura. Okay, the two parties, the polarities between dharma and adharma. And the Itihasa Purana literature speaks of this struggle, the dharma versus adharma struggle, and aims to instruct the individual human being on the path of dharma. The scenes may be different, the characters may be different, the settings entirely different, but the theme is the same, dharma versus adharma. And dharma attains a certain primacy, especially when it confronts adharma. There is the dharma of the sannyasa dharma, the yogi. The yogi is dharma of the acharya, dharma of the guru. But this kshatriya dharma in confrontation with adharma is one of the most powerful, profound, and timeless dimensions of Sanatana Dharma. With that, we will end. Thank you. Namaste so much for listening. We'll take a few questions. There is a Q&A box. We'll look at the Q&A box here.
Yeah, please take a look at the Q&A box. I got a little poll up. Kalyanji will be teaching the orientation to Hindu studies this next quarter. And if you're interested in becoming somebody like a BGG who's got an interest, dove deep, and is now making presentations and applying Hindu studies in different ways, please consider enrolling in a program at Hindu University of America. Please fill out that poll. Yeah, Kalyanji, if you want to just go through some of the questions, the Q&A, it's already top of the hour, past the top of the hour. So
correct. So Chanakya, the first question, Mohan Chellani ji, I did not mention the anti-India opposition parties, politicians in maintaining restraint. Chanakya is so brilliant in this regard, in the Arthashastra, where he's constantly warning about the internal enemy, the one who wants to dethrone the king, and they are strategically plotting all the time to bring down the king, from within the country. And a moment of conflict with an external enemy makes the king particularly vulnerable because his focus is redirected. And now the internal enemies wake up to launch an internal attack. And so it's extraordinary to study the Arthashastra. And I must say, we have, my knowledge of the Arthashastra has also tremendously advanced since taking the Arthashastra course, which we took at the graduates level. It's in the Master of Arts and Hindu Studies program. We have one course on the Arthashastra, and it was a fantastic course. Okay, Lakshmiji, next question. Sindhur. Yes, see, a couple of things, okay. Everybody can wear the sindur. All women can wear the sindur. In fact, I also wore sindur. I just did my Amavasya Tarpana, Adi Amavasya Tarpana a couple of days ago. And I also wore a sindoor. I put my vibhuti and the sindoor. So the sindoor is really more universal because individual communities may prefer to wear it and have certain specific practices, but it's a universal symbol in India. It signifies the third eye, Shiva's third eye. How does the map look if the USA is the Vijigishu? Hey, this is a fantastic question, by the way. Okay, it is not our focus in this
Yeah.
webinar, but it's a beautiful analysis to subject the United States of America to the same analysis using Arthashastra's principles. But it's not our focus right now, so I will pass on that question.
Yeah, in fact, that's the beauty of Arthashastra, that you need to analyze the countries that you have interest using the Rajmandala Saptanga theory, Saptaprakriti theory, so that you know how the dynamics is playing out.
Yeah. So Mohan Chelani ji is saying Pakistan may change quickly. Yeah, it can. Okay, so one of the brilliant aspects of the Arthashastra is that nothing is static. Kingdoms are constantly changing, powers are falling, new powers are emerging, new orientation, new attitudes. A friend can become an enemy can become a friend. So in this dynamic nature of the Raja Mandala, one has to be on one's toes constantly, mapping constantly the relationships and equations across the states. And even within one's own country, things can change dramatically. If one party falls, another party. I mean, if you imagine what will happen to Bharat if Congress comes to power in India, who will be our friends and who will be the enemies, right? Suresh Chanaji is asking, is the act of espionage an act of war? Yes, actually, Chanakya is very clear, and the chapters in the Arthashastra pertaining to intelligence gathering will blow your mind because it is so sophisticated in terms of its articulation of the importance of intelligence gathering. How do you evaluate this relative strength of your neighboring state? You have to constantly be gathering intelligence on the condition of the neighboring state. And it's
It goes to
beautiful.
the level of how do you evaluate the spies, who should be the spies, what type of spies should be there, all of that, how the entire organization of internal and external intelligence should be deployed. All of that is there.
Yeah. What does Chanakya Niti say about how a single state should fight a war with a powerful alliance? Chanakya would say, don't fight,
Don't fight.
surrender. Don't fight, surrender, form a treaty, give up something, stay quiet. Do not subject your people to the conditions, conditions of deprivation. Do not subject your people in your country to the aftermath of an ill-fought war where you suffer enormous losses. That's unintelligent.
So basically, Chanakya gives the ability to be the realist in the current sense of the geopolitics. What is the real strength of your country? What is the strength of opponent? Be realist and make decision. That's what he's saying.
Yeah. Will you share the recording? Yeah, absolutely. We will share the recording with all the registered audiences. What kind of war is Sindhu water country? It is beautiful. It's a mantra yuddha. It is not open war. It is turning off the water, the Sindhu River, and turning it off and turning it on again. It's a kind of controlling the consequences on Pakistan. It's a brilliant strategy, and it is now articulated as very much part of the this Operation Sindoor. Suresh Sanaji. Matsya Nyaya would have called for complete annihilating the internal external enemies. It's not practical. See, Chanakya understands that complete decimation of a neighboring state is never fully possible. What is really possible is degrading their capabilities, diminishing their capacities, turning back. If you attack, what India has done is it has turned back Pakistan's ability and capacity to inflict damage on India by a couple of decades. Pakistan has to rebuild, and that is a win. That is a great victory in this context. Okay, Madhuri Sharon, why Australia, South America, South Africa not considered? Okay, that's a great question. Really, they can be, but we kind of did a limited analysis. You can go on and on. Looking at many different scenarios. Yeah, how with all this wisdom from Chanakya was India conquered by the? I think India lost Chanakya, lost the Arthashastra for some time. The Chanakya himself says a leader, a great leader, a Vijigishu, a Chakravartin. He sets in motion ideas, concepts that last 1,000 years. That is his definition of leadership. Dirgha Dhura Drishtha. That is the leader according to Chanakya. Now, this was forgotten, and I think Chanakya sort of receded into the background of India's consciousness, and it is now re-emerging. He's now
And
re-emerging.
yeah,
Mm.
and what Kalyanji is saying is not just figure of speech that we lost it. In reality, the manuscript was found in early 20th century. So
Yeah.
it is not just that we lost it from the consciousness, we actually lost it. And then it took a while, and it's not it's not surprising that when Indians were yearning for independence, the manuscript was found again.
So
That's what
when we say no, the Arthashastra was lost. See, in the Hindu tradition, a manuscript doesn't exist in isolation like a textbook in a library. Okay, all the Hindu texts are embedded within a teaching tradition, a sampradaya. I hope that is clear. Okay, if the sampradaya is destroyed, the text sits around in the library. It is gone. It's not alive anymore. So it is the interwoven relationship between a teaching tradition, a sampradaya, and the text itself, the Shruti Purana, the text, the Vedangas, the Vedic literature. That is what constitutes a living, breathing tradition of knowledge tradition in India. Okay, Ram Shastriji wants to ask a question. We'll come back to you, Ramji. 1 second. Did Chanakya have any answer to those who doubt everything? Well, there is only one solution to doubt, which is education. Okay, study, education, knowledge. How do you think India will overcome this territory decline in the opposition of Pakistan? It has to reclaim. Eventually, when the balance of power shifts decisively in favor of India, it will reclaim, but it's not there yet. It's cautiously moving right now. So we'll see what happens in the future. Would you consider the initial narrative that India lost in Operation Sindhu? Yeah, that is called, that's a kind of Kuta Yuddha, that is spreading misinformation, spreading false narratives, conditioning people's minds to think of something as the truth when it is actually totally false. And that's actually, it's called information warfare or intelligence warfare. It's happening
because
a lot nowadays.
Pakistan cannot do Mantra Yuddha and Prakash Yuddha directly with India. They always resorted to Kuta Yuddha and Guda Yuddha. And in the wake of Operation Sindoor, that muscle strong came out. And obviously, there are a lot of internal people in India who are supporting them.
Okay, Ram Shastriji, you can ask your question, please. Go ahead.
Yes, sir, Kalyan. Thank you, Abhijit ji. Great webinar. And I will be brief because I know others want to ask as well. So I'm looking at this framework, the eight Raj Mandala framework. And if you can permit my indulgence, I'd look at it from USA's perspective and along with what you said in India's internal. The theory is, and I would like your question, it is, as you said, it's a irreconcilable dharma versus adharma war. But the overwhelming thinking, and USA, everybody that you mentioned in that framework, is that these two guys are the same. They should somehow be brought together, maybe give Kashmir, maybe have joint sovereignty, let them both share Kashmir, let them be secular, and then we can go and sell our pizza and Coke and Madonna culture to them. There are billions of these guys. How within the Arthashastra framework, that is clearly a dharma. That is essentially saying you're worthless. You are only as good as how many Coke and pizza we can sell to you, right? Correct. And for that, if you want to surrender to Islamic terrorism, you should just look at it differently. Call it joint sovereignty. There'll be Pakistan rupee also in the Kashmir Valley. Both of you be good boys. Practice secularism. We will call you great democracy. And how do you view that? How does one fight that kind of a dharma?
Actually, if the state, if the Indian state, studies the Arthashastra, Okay, if it grounds its foreign policy, its strategy in the Arthashastra itself reveals the answer, right? You know, America is a very, very strong power, militarily speaking, relative to India. India cannot engage in open hostilities with the United States of America. Therefore, India must continually engage with diplomacy with United States of America. On the other hand, Pakistan is a weak power. Number one, it is an asura. It is an asuric power. Number two, it is never going to give up its designs on India. Number three, it will always engage in terrorism against India. Therefore, based on the history of our experiences with our neighbor Pakistan, we have to engage in dual policy. This is what is this? Dvaiti Bhava. Against Pakistan, it should be open war. Mantra Yuddha and Prakasha Yuddha and Kuta Yuddha and Guda Yuddha. With America, it is Mantra Yuddha. And Mantra Yuddha with America is not so much intelligence war, but it's actually continually advocating, educating America to understand that their equating Pakistan with India is a policy that has run out of its course. Maybe when India was very weak 2-3 decades ago, they could equalize the two. America is very slow to learn the lesson that India is advancing very fast, and it needs to separate its policies between Pakistan and with India and try to seek some kind of balance of power between the two in the region. It's not very productive for America. So therefore, in the self-interest of nations, what you call the national interest of each nation, the right equation between those two nations or countries will eventually emerge. And using the Arthashastra as a source manual for these types of engagements will only introduce greater clarity and speed in decision making and avoids the confusion that very often has plagued foreign policy of governments. Even in the United States of America today, if you ask the question, is India your friend or your enemy? It's very confused right now.
Yeah.
United States of America is very confused. What
I
is
think,
India?
yeah. I mean, if you look at it, Arthashastra also gives you 3 types of winners, right? Why do they want to fight with you? For 3 reasons. US is obviously always talks about trade, which is a Lobha Vijaya. Okay. So you engage with them on trade, treaties, all of that, which is where Mantra Yuddha comes in. Because they want to be the Lobhi Vijaya. They want to be seen as winning in the trade. So you work with them through treaties. But Pakistan wants always Asura Vijaya. So you need to fight with them with all 4 types of wars. That is another way of looking at how Arthashastra recommends working with each country.
Okay. Any more questions? We're gonna end now.
All right.
Okay.
It has been my pleasure to host. What an amazing webinar. Definitely had many people say this was their favorite webinar. Very interesting and excellent. Thank you everyone for joining. Jayashri ji, Jaraman ji, thank you for your comments. Yeah, appreciate you, Mekalaji. And so I have the poll up. Let us know if you're interested in enrolling in Orientation to Hindu Studies. That's a course Kalyanshi will be teaching. If you're interested in one of the programs, I see 6 of you actually want us to share information with you about a program. That is great. I'm going to just share one more poll. How did you find out about this webinar? Let us know that. My pleasure. If you have free times on weekends, we do a webinar basically every weekend, sometimes 2. Look forward to having you on a webinar, maybe a course, enrolling in the future. Kalyanji, after you and Abhijiji make your closing thoughts and get out of here, I'll share a couple more slides about the upcoming retreat so that our audience can see that on their way out.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, I'd like to actually wrap up quickly. See, the Vijayji has a question. Modern India deeply misunderstands the principle of ahimsa. Yes, absolutely, 100%. Okay, that's true, because ahimsa is not about eliminating himsa altogether. It is about minimizing ahimsa, minimizing violence, minimizing himsa. Okay, if you understand ahimsa as minimizing himsa, it will yield very different principles rather than unilaterally giving up on all warfare and violence to uphold a principle called ahimsa. Okay, so that's the first thing.
So it is a path of least violence, ahimsa.
Least
so you
violence,
find out a
exactly.
path which gives you least violence, and that's where ultimately Arjun concludes that if I don't fight, the cost is going to be so high, keeping Duryodhana in power, that is going to create more higher cost and that's why better I go for the war. That is how he found the path of least violence. That is ahimsa.
Yeah, Praveen Chandra is making a statement. It's not a question, so we'll just let it go. Sindur, Sodur, Sindur. Okay, excellent presentation. Thank you. America is a Mitra or Ari. America itself is very confused, Kaivalyaji. Right now, America is a very confused state regarding its own standing in the world. Okay, it's in a sort of a very complicated transition. From it is blowing up a lot of its traditional relationships. America's thinking is very confused at the moment. Mohan Chelani, US may never be India's Mitra. No, it will be. Mohanji, see, when India grows stronger and stronger and stronger in terms of its economy, its capabilities, its military, its capacity for trade, exports, manufacture, and so on, as India grows in strength, US will become India's friend. That's the way the world works. How can one practice Arthashastra when you have Mitra, Ari, and Asura in one's own family? Yeah. Yeah. That's a wonderful question. Yeah, you got to have. I think Arthashastra will be helpful even then. Okay, will this be part of SCPH's course? Maybe in the future. Okay. Chanakya Niti, India should not be overly sensitive about the India-Pak hyphenation. You talk about the hyphens type. Yeah, I think Chanakya Arthashastra brings tremendous clarity into a situation that is normally very, very confused and very much obfuscated. Yeah. Okay. With that, I will close. Okay, I will close, and I'll say thank you to all of you for joining and participating. I'll hand off to Ankur, and I will exit. Ankur, please.
Yeah,
Okay?
Abhijit, if you want to say last
Dhanyavad everybody. My strong recommendation is, as a student, I would recommend please join HUA, take at least the starting course, Overview of Hindu Studies. Kalyanji is an excellent teacher. It will open up new avenues for you and will bring transformation to you. Dhanyavad again for this webinar.
Dhanyavad.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Check out our upcoming retreats. They'll be on August 29th to September 1st. So that's coming up. And then we have this Experiencing Devi retreat with Sri Aswaji, and we have a holistic yoga retreat with Sri Ram Sarvatam. So if you're considering a retreat at our HUA campus, please take a look and join. If you are on your way out, please fill out the poll. Let us know where you heard about this webinar. Appreciate you all joining. Thank you so much, as always. I'll keep the music going and share the slides as you are on your way out. Appreciate everyone else. Put in the chat where you're zooming in from if you would like a shout out. Definitely thank you all for joining today's webinar. If you have suggestions for future webinars, you can always email me. I'll put my email in the chat. Always helps if you have a guest in mind. Shona G from Scotland, thank you for being here with us today. Ram Shastriji, glad that you were able to ask your question. Thank you for sharing. Yes, Abhijit, thank you so much. All right, namaste. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you. See you at the next one. Namaste.